This woman destroyed her career with one HR complaint. Her name is Samantha, 29 years old, and she thought she was standing up for herself. She thought she was fighting against an unfair boss who piled too much work on her plate. She marched into human resources, filed her complaint, and felt victorious. But 3 months later, she was working 12-hour days, losing major clients, and watching her supervisor thrive at a better company while she drowned in responsibilities she never understood. What she discovered was devastating. The boss she complained about? He wasn't the problem. She was. Hi everyone, I'm Emma, and welcome back to Mrs. Emma, where I share the most unbelievable real-life stories that will leave you speechless. Today's story is about workplace consequences, misplaced anger, and a lesson learned far too late. If you've ever felt overwhelmed at work or considered filing a complaint, you need to hear what happened to Samantha. Trust me, this one will make you think twice. But before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe to Mrs. Emma so you never miss another incredible tale. Now let's get into it. When Samantha walked through the doors of Mitchell Software Solutions 2 years ago, she believed she had finally found her place. The company wasn't massive, but it had a solid reputation downtown. The benefits package was competitive. The office had natural lighting, and during her interview, she met Donovan, the department supervisor who would change her life in ways she never anticipated. Donovan was in his late 30s, with an easygoing demeanor that immediately put her at ease. Unlike other managers who treated interviews like interrogations, Donovan actually listened when she spoke. He asked thoughtful questions about her previous experience, nodded along to her answers, and never once made her feel inadequate for the gaps in her knowledge. When she asked questions about the role, he took his time explaining, using examples that made perfect sense. By the end of that interview, Samantha felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. The first few months proved her instincts right. Donovan checked in regularly without being overbearing. When she struggled with the company's database system, he didn't sigh with impatience or make her feel stupid. Instead, he pulled up a chair beside her desk and walked her through it, step by careful step, until the process clicked in her mind. When she accidentally sent an email to the wrong distribution list, causing minor confusion across departments, she braced for anger. Instead, Donovan smiled and said, "We've all done that. Let me show you how to set up your contacts better so it doesn't happen again." For the first time in her professional life, Samantha felt like she had a supervisor who genuinely cared about her success. She handled routine administrative tasks, processing orders, managing communications between departments, organizing files, answering phones when the receptionist was busy. It was straightforward work, the kind she had done before, and she excelled at it. Her coworkers were friendly, the office culture was relaxed, and she found herself actually looking forward to Monday mornings. But then, something began to shift. Around the 6-month mark, Donovan started giving Samantha additional projects. At first, she felt flattered. "Can you start tracking these performance metrics?" he asked one Tuesday morning, handing her a spreadsheet. "I think you've got a good eye for patterns." The following week, it was coordinating with the sales team on client deliverables, then managing the department's shared database, then preparing preliminary reports for quarterly reviews. The tasks kept coming, each one layered on top of her existing responsibilities. Samantha found herself staying an extra hour after work, then 2 hours, then arriving early just to keep up. Her coworkers seemed to finish their days on time, chatting about weekend plans while she frantically typed away at her desk, eating lunch in front of her computer screen. When she finally worked up the courage to mention the growing workload during one of their weekly check-ins, Donovan leaned back in his chair and smiled. "I know it feels like a lot right now," he said, "but I wouldn't give you these projects if I didn't think you could handle them. You're doing great, Samantha. Just focus on the urgent items first, and the rest will fall into place." His words should have been encouraging, but instead, they felt dismissive. Easy for him to say when he wasn't the one drowning in spreadsheets and deadline notifications. Easy for him to be confident in her abilities when he went home at 5:30 every evening, while she was still at her desk at 7. The stress began manifesting physically. Samantha woke up with tension headaches that no amount of ibuprofen could touch. Her stomach twisted into knots every Sunday evening, dreading the week ahead. She snapped at her roommate over unwashed dishes and canceled plans with friends because she was too exhausted to socialize. Her entire life had become about surviving the work week. And the worst part? Donovan's feedback. It wasn't cruel or harsh, but it was constant. She'd spend hours perfecting a report, only for him to return it with notes in red ink. "Can you adjust the formatting here?" Or, "Let's add more analysis to this section." Nothing she did seemed good enough. Every completed task came with suggestions for improvement. Every project with constructive criticism that felt like tiny cuts, slowly draining her confidence. She started dreading their one-on-one meetings. Her hands would shake slightly as she walked into his office, knowing he would find something wrong with her work. It didn't matter how carefully she proofread, how many hours she invested, or how thoroughly she analyzed the data. There was always something to correct, always something to improve. What made everything worse was watching her coworkers. Camille, who worked in client services, seemed to glide through her days. She took long coffee breaks, laughed with people in the hallway, and left precisely at 5 o'clock every single day. Marcus from accounting spent half his mornings talking about sports. Jennifer in operations always had time for personal phone calls. Meanwhile, Samantha was juggling multiple urgent deadlines, coordinating between departments that didn't communicate well, managing vendor relationships, and preparing reports that nobody else seemed responsible for. The injustice of it burned in her chest. Why was she the only one suffering? Why was she the only one being held to impossible standards? She began documenting everything Donovan assigned her, creating a detailed list that grew longer each week. Process orders, update 3 separate databases, coordinate vendor deliveries, prepare weekly performance reports, manage client communication logs, handle overflow calls, attend interdepartmental meetings and take notes, research new software solutions. The list went on and on, a mountain of responsibilities that no other administrative employee in the company carried. But Donovan never acknowledged her efforts. During team meetings, he praised Camille for her client retention numbers, thanked Marcus for catching an accounting discrepancy, and complimented Jennifer on organizing the supply closet. When Samantha stayed late to fix a critical system error that could have cost them a major account, Donovan simply said, "Thanks for handling that," and moved on to the next agenda item. She noticed something else too. Donovan was warm and friendly with her coworkers, asking about their weekends, making jokes, participating in casual office banter. But with Samantha, every conversation was strictly business. When she tried to engage him in friendly small talk, his responses were polite but brief before redirecting to work topics. It felt personal, like he had decided she was only valuable as a productivity machine, not as a human being with feelings and a life outside the office. The isolation grew. Her weekends became recovery periods rather than enjoyable breaks. She'd lie in bed on Saturday mornings, too mentally exhausted to do anything productive, staring at the ceiling and thinking about all the tasks waiting for her on Monday. Her sleep suffered. She'd toss and turn at night, her mind racing through her to-do list, anxiety keeping her awake until the early morning hours. This job was literally destroying her health, and for what? So Donovan could look good to upper management while she did all the actual work? The resentment festered, growing stronger with each passing week. The moment that changed everything happened on a Friday afternoon in late autumn. Samantha was already running on fumes, having worked past 7 every night that week. Her desk was buried under printouts, sticky notes, and half-empty coffee cups. Her eyes burned from staring at her computer screen, and her shoulders ached from tension she couldn't release. That's when Donovan appeared at her desk and asked her to step into his office. He wanted to discuss areas for improvement in her performance. Samantha felt her stomach drop. After everything she had sacrificed, after all the late nights and skipped lunches and canceled plans, he wanted to criticize her work? She followed him into his office, her jaw clenched so tight it made her temples throb. For 30 minutes, Donovan went through a list of minor errors she'd made over the past month. A missed deadline notification, formatting inconsistencies in a report, a miscommunication with a vendor about delivery schedules. He wasn't mean about it. His tone was professional and measured, but every word felt like an attack. He offered suggestions for improvement, talked about time management strategies, and emphasized the importance of attention to detail. Not once did he acknowledge how much she was already handling. Not once did he thank her for the countless extra hours she'd invested. Not once did he recognize that she was drowning while trying to meet his impossible expectations. Samantha left his office that Friday evening feeling hollow. She drove home in a fog, barely remembering the route. All weekend, she couldn't stop replaying the meeting in her mind, feeling the injustice of it burn hotter and hotter in her chest. By Sunday night, she had made her decision. She deserved better than this. She needed to protect herself from this toxic work environment before it destroyed her completely. Monday morning, she scheduled a meeting with Patricia, the Human Resources Director. Patricia's office was on the third floor, decorated with motivational posters about teamwork and respect. Samantha sat across from her desk, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to speak. This was the right thing to do. She was advocating for herself, standing up against unfair treatment. She was being brave. She told Patricia everything: the excessive workload that exceeded her job description, the unrealistic deadlines that forced her to sacrifice her personal life, the constant criticism that made her feel inadequate no matter how hard she tried, the stress that was affecting her physical health, giving her headaches and stomach problems and sleepless nights. The way Donovan treated her differently than other employees, cold and businesslike while being warm and friendly with everyone else. "He's creating a hostile work environment," Samantha said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I can't keep working like this. Something has to change." Patricia listened carefully, taking detailed notes and asking questions about specific incidents. She wanted timelines, examples, documentation. Samantha showed her the list of all the tasks Donovan had assigned beyond her original job description. The evidence was undeniable, written in black and white. "This is a serious concern," Patricia said, her expression grave. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for workplace harassment and toxic management practices. I want you to know that we take these complaints very seriously, and we will conduct a thorough investigation." The relief Samantha felt was overwhelming. Finally, someone was listening. Finally, there would be accountability. Finally, Donovan would be forced to recognize how his management style was damaging and unfair. She left Patricia's office feeling lighter than she had in months, imagining how much better everything would be once HR intervened. She had no idea what was actually about to happen. Over the next few days, Donovan's behavior changed noticeably. He avoided eye contact during department meetings. His responses to her emails became brief and formal. He stopped providing feedback on her work altogether, simply accepting whatever she submitted without comment. The change was so obvious that even her co-workers noticed, exchanging glances when Donovan hurried past Samantha's desk without his usual greeting. 2 weeks after her HR meeting, Patricia called Samantha back to her office. This time, the atmosphere was different. Patricia's expression was serious, almost uncomfortable. "I wanted to update you on the situation with Donovan," Patricia began. "After our conversation with him about creating a more supportive work environment, he's made the decision to resign from his position. He'll be finishing out his 2 weeks' notice and then leaving the company to pursue other opportunities." Samantha sat in stunned silence. She had wanted him to change his management style, to treat her more fairly, to acknowledge her contributions. She hadn't wanted him to quit. Part of her felt a surge of vindication. Her complaints had been taken so seriously that they'd resulted in real consequences. But another part of her felt a creeping sense of unease. What did this mean for the department? Who would manage their team? Who would handle all the work Donovan usually did? "We'll begin searching for his replacement immediately," Patricia continued. "In the meantime, continue with your regular responsibilities and let me know if you need any support during this transition." Regular responsibilities. The words would haunt her. Donovan's final 2 weeks were unbearably awkward. He moved through the office like a ghost, speaking only when necessary, his face carefully neutral. When he scheduled one-on-one meetings with each team member to transition ongoing projects, Samantha felt her anxiety spike. What would he say to her? Would he be angry, accusatory? When her turn came, Donovan handed her a thick folder of documents. Inside was a detailed list of tasks and responsibilities he'd been managing. Client escalations for major accounts, vendor contract negotiations, monthly budget planning, quarterly reports to senior leadership, coordination meetings with other department heads, strategic planning for operational improvements. The list seemed endless, each item more complex than the last. You'll be handling these temporarily until they find my replacement, Donovan said, his voice completely devoid of emotion. Patricia said you should be capable of managing the transition. Samantha stared at the papers, feeling ice water pour through her veins. This wasn't what she had expected. This wasn't what she had wanted. She had complained about being overworked, and now they were dumping his entire job on top of her existing responsibilities. She tried asking questions about the more complicated tasks, but Donovan's answers were minimal and unhelpful. The notes are all there, he said, tapping the folder. You'll figure it out. You're smart enough. The sarcasm in his voice was barely concealed, and Samantha realized with dawning horror that he was setting her up to fail. When Donovan's last day arrived, he packed his desk in silence, shook a few hands, and walked out the door without looking back. Samantha watched him leave, the weight of that folder sitting on her desk like a ticking bomb, and felt the first real tremor of fear. The first week after Donovan's departure was complete chaos. Samantha tried to manage her original tasks while juggling the new responsibilities, but it was like trying to hold water in her hands. Everything leaked through her fingers. The client escalation calls were nightmares. Angry customers with complex technical problems expected her to make executive decisions she had no authority to make. When she tried to escalate issues to other managers, they told her to handle it herself since she was covering operations. One client yelled at her for 15 minutes about service disruptions while she frantically searched through Donovan's notes for information that wasn't there. The vendor negotiations were even worse. These were established business relationships built over years, complex contracts with pricing structures and terms she didn't understand. During one call, a vendor representative asked her specific questions about their agreement terms, and Samantha had to admit she didn't know the answers. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Can I speak with someone who actually knows what they're talking about? The vendor finally asked, frustration clear in their voice. She was working 10, 11, 12-hour days and still falling behind. Her email inbox was a disaster, with urgent messages getting buried under the constant influx of new problems. She missed deadlines she didn't even know existed. She made decisions without understanding the full context, only to discover later that she'd created new problems that needed fixing. Patricia kept scheduling check-in meetings, asking how Samantha was, adjusting to the expanded role. Every time Samantha tried to explain that she was drowning, that she needed help, that this was unsustainable, Patricia would smile and say things like, "This is a great opportunity for you to show leadership potential," or, "I know it's challenging, but you're really stepping up." The words rang hollow, meaningless platitudes that did nothing to address the actual crisis. Meanwhile, the search for Donovan's replacement dragged on at a glacial pace. "We've interviewed several candidates," Patricia would say, "but we haven't found the right fit yet." Translation: Samantha was cheaper than hiring someone qualified, so why rush? 3 weeks into this nightmare, Samantha made her first major error. In the chaos of managing too many responsibilities, she missed a critical vendor contract renewal deadline. The contract had automatically expired, causing the company to lose significant bulk discount pricing on essential services. When the accounting department flagged the unexpected expense increase, the trail led directly back to her oversight. Senior management called her into a meeting. 3 executives sat across from her, their expressions cold and disappointed. They asked her to explain what had happened, why she hadn't managed the timeline properly, why she hadn't escalated the issue before it became a problem. Samantha tried to explain about the overwhelming workload, about taking on responsibilities she wasn't trained for, about the lack of proper transition documentation. Her explanations sounded like excuses, even to her own ears. That's when Patricia suggested professional development courses, project management training, leadership seminars, time management workshops, all on her own time, of course. So now, not only was she drowning in work she wasn't qualified for, but she was also expected to sacrifice her evenings and weekends to learn skills that should have been Donovan's job in the first place. The real devastation came when major clients started complaining. Samantha had been attempting to manage their accounts, but without Donovan's years of relationship building and deep understanding of their needs, things were falling through the cracks. Missed communications, delayed responses to concerns, service issues that went unresolved because she didn't know how to navigate internal processes. One significant client actually threatened to cancel their contract, citing declining service quality since management changes. Her coworkers' attitudes shifted too. Instead of sympathy, she sensed irritation. Projects moved slower. Questions went unanswered. The office dynamic had completely changed, and somehow people were acting like it was all her fault. Camille, the same coworker Samantha had resented for her easy workload, made a pointed comment about how things ran smoother before, when Samantha couldn't immediately resolve a billing dispute. The isolation was crushing. Word had spread that Samantha's HR complaint had driven Donovan away, and not everyone was happy about the disruption it had caused. People avoided her in the break room. Conversations died when she approached. She had become the person who complained instead of adapting, who caused problems instead of solving them. 4 months after Donovan's departure, the company finally hired his replacement. Her name was Victoria, and she had an MBA from a prestigious university, 15 years of management experience, and a resume that made Samantha feel like a child playing dress-up in adult clothes. Victoria's first week was humiliating. She reviewed everything Samantha had been handling and systematically began correcting mistakes Samantha hadn't even known she'd made. Client communication protocols that were incorrect. Vendor agreements with terms Samantha had misunderstood. Budget allocations that were completely wrong. Reports with analysis so shallow they were essentially useless. "I'm going to need to rebuild several of these client relationships," Victoria said during a department meeting, her tone professional but firm. "We've experienced some damage to our reputation during the transition period, and that needs to be addressed immediately." Samantha wanted to sink through the floor. Months of her hardest work, dismissed as damage that needed fixing. Victoria swiftly reassigned the complex responsibilities back to appropriate management levels, making it clear that Samantha's role was strictly administrative support. At first, Samantha felt relief at having a normal workload again. But then the reality settled in. She had failed. Publicly, completely. The worst was yet to come. Through office gossip, Samantha learned what had happened to Donovan after he left. He hadn't struggled to find work. He hadn't suffered consequences for his supposed toxic management style. Instead, he'd landed a senior management position at a much larger, more prestigious company. His salary had increased significantly. His benefits were better. His title was more impressive. During his interview process, he'd framed his departure as a strategic career move, seeking an organization with better infrastructure and more clearly defined processes. He'd made leaving look like ambition, not failure. And because he was good at what he did, because he had a track record of success and strong professional relationships, companies had competed to hire him. But the truly devastating blow came next. Donovan had taken 2 of the company's biggest clients with him to his new firm. These were accounts he'd personally managed for years, relationships he'd built through consistency and expertise. When these clients learned he was leaving, they'd decided to follow him. The lost revenue was substantial enough that the company had to postpone planned bonuses and cut certain employee benefits. Samantha's complaint hadn't exposed a toxic supervisor. It had cost the company a valuable manager, significant revenue, and employee morale. And everyone knew it was her fault. The final blow came during Samantha's annual performance review, 6 months after the entire ordeal began. She sat in a conference room with Victoria and Patricia, a printed evaluation document between them. Samantha had hoped for acknowledgement of her efforts during the difficult transition, maybe even recognition for trying to step up during a crisis. What she got instead was devastating. Victoria went through the mistakes methodically, the missed deadlines, the damaged client relationships, the vendor contract error, the poor judgment calls, the inability to manage complex responsibilities effectively. "While we appreciate your willingness to attempt these tasks," Victoria said, her voice neutral, "the results demonstrated that you weren't ready for this level of responsibility. Moving forward, we need you to focus on excelling in your current role rather than reaching beyond your capabilities." Then Patricia dropped the bomb. "As part of this review, we also examined your original complaints about Donovan." She slid another document across the table. "Our investigation concluded that most of your concerns stemmed from normal workplace challenges rather than actual management problems." Samantha felt the room tilt. "What?" Patricia continued, her voice gentle but firm. "The increased workload you described was standard for someone in your position showing growth potential. Donovan was providing you with developmental opportunities, which is what good managers do. His feedback was within normal supervisory practices, meant to help you improve and grow professionally. Sometimes, Victoria added, being challenged feels uncomfortable. Good managers push their employees outside their comfort zones because that's how professional development happens. Your inability to handle constructive criticism and additional responsibilities has been noted as an area needing significant improvement. The evaluation made it official. Samantha's reaction to normal workplace expectations had been disproportionate and unprofessional. Her complaint had been unjustified. She hadn't been the victim of a toxic supervisor. She had been an employee who couldn't handle the pressure of professional growth, who had blamed her manager for her own limitations. The promotion opportunities she'd once dreamed about? Gone. The respect of her coworkers? Destroyed. Her professional reputation? Irreparably damaged. She was stuck in the same entry-level position she'd started with, but now everyone knew she was the person who couldn't handle pressure, who created problems instead of solving them, who drove away a good manager because she couldn't appreciate his efforts to help her succeed. Now, 8 months after filing that HR complaint, Samantha works in the same office, at the same desk, doing the same basic tasks she did when she first started. But everything is different. The atmosphere is different. Her coworkers treat her differently. Her opportunities for advancement have evaporated. Meanwhile, she hears through professional networks that Donovan is thriving. He's been promoted again at his new company. The clients who followed him are happy and expanding their contracts. He's speaking at industry conferences, building his reputation as an effective, supportive leader who develops talent and builds strong teams. The irony is crushing. Samantha had convinced herself she was being overworked and underappreciated. She had believed Donovan was unfairly piling responsibilities on her while ignoring her contributions. She had felt justified in her anger, righteous in her complaint, certain that she was standing up against workplace toxicity. But the truth she discovered too late was far more painful. Donovan had been giving her opportunities. He had seen potential in her and was trying to develop her skills. The additional responsibilities weren't punishment. They were trust. The feedback wasn't criticism. It was mentorship. The high expectations weren't unrealistic. They were a vote of confidence in her abilities. She had interpreted every challenge as an attack, every piece of feedback as inadequacy, every additional task as exploitation. She had compared herself to coworkers without understanding that they were at different stages of their careers with different developmental needs. She had mistaken professional growth for workplace abuse, and by the time she understood what she'd lost, it was too late to fix it. Too late to apologize. Too late to learn from Donovan. Too late to prove she could handle the opportunities he'd been offering. She had destroyed a relationship with a supervisor who was actually invested in her success, and in doing so, she had sabotaged her own career. The worst part is the regret. It sits heavy in her chest every single day. Every time she sees Victoria efficiently managing the department Donovan once led. Every time she hears about Donovan's continued success. Every time she notices her coworkers getting opportunities that will never come her way again. She knows the truth now. The toxic work environment she had complained about was never real. The real problem had been her perception, her inability to handle discomfort, her unwillingness to push through challenges that would have made her better at her job. She still doesn't sleep well at night. But now it's not from stress about deadlines. It's from lying awake, replaying every interaction with Donovan, seeing all the moments where he was trying to help her and she interpreted it as harm. It's from understanding that she took a supervisor who believed in her potential and turned him into an enemy because she couldn't distinguish between being challenged and being attacked. Samantha's story doesn't have a happy ending. She's stuck in professional limbo. Her reputation damaged, her opportunities limited, her confidence shattered. And the supervisor she blamed for all her problems? He's out there somewhere, succeeding, probably never thinking about her at all. So there you have it, everyone. Samantha's story. A cautionary tale about perception, professional growth, and the devastating consequences of mistaking challenge for toxicity. This story teaches us something crucial. Not every difficult situation at work is toxic. Sometimes being uncomfortable means we're growing. Sometimes additional responsibilities mean someone sees potential in us. Sometimes criticism isn't an attack, it's an investment in our development. Before you file that HR complaint, before you label your supervisor as toxic, ask yourself, Am I being genuinely mistreated, or am I being challenged in ways that make me uncomfortable? Is my manager attacking me or pushing me to develop skills I'll need to advance? Am I the victim of workplace abuse, or am I struggling with the normal discomforts of professional growth? The difference between these two realities can define your entire career. Samantha learned that lesson the hardest way possible. If this story made you think, if it challenged your perspective, or if you know someone who needs to hear it, please hit that like button right now. Share this video with your friends, your coworkers, anyone who's navigating workplace challenges, and make sure you subscribe to Mrs. Emma so you never miss another incredible, thought-provoking story like this one. I'm Emma, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, remember, sometimes the growth we need feels exactly like the pressure we want to escape. Thank you for watching.